So we're beginning today in Mitzvah Shem, the Mamer for this year, the Basi Ligani. We're almost a month before Yud Shvat. It's always better to start earlier than later. At least a month before, or more than a month before. It's even better. Okay, so the ice that we're going to be learning this year is Ice Yud Gimel. In Mitzvah Shem, we're going to learn the Mamer of the Rebbe, Tafshin Chav Gimel, and then Tafshin Mem Gimel, which are the 2 years that the Rebbe explained this ice. You have it in the original Sefer of the Friedrich Rebbe, Basi Ligani, Tafshin Yod, and it's printed in many places. You have it translated in English, I'm sure. I'm sure it was translated in English, right? The original Basi Ligani. Yeah, okay. So here, this ice is actually in the middle of an inyan. So before we go into the Hemshech of the inyan, we have to have some kind of a background, what the Friedrich Rebbe is talking about over here. In Ois, I think it's Ois Tes or Ois Yud, the Friedrich Rebbe talks about the fact that you have the Tzivus Havaya, the Yidden, that are the soldiers that are fighting the war in this world, fighting the Choshech, fighting any opposition that there is in this world. And there the Friedrich Rebbe says that the foot soldiers are the ones that are the most important. They are the ones that are actually fighting and conquering the territory and having the Mesiras Nefesh. And the king is mevazbez kol ha'eitzres, all of the treasures that he has, that he never touches and remains there for generations. In other words, very deep, high powers. The king is mevazbez, all those eitzres for the simple foot soldiers to come and use them for the nitzachon of the Milchama. The nitzachon of the foot soldiers to conquer the territory, especially when it's a war that's about the kingdom itself is at stake. Feels like that the king feels that his whole Metzias is at stake. It touches him very deeply. So this is the source of Koyach HaNitzachon, and therefore he's mevazbez the deepest treasures that he keeps hidden away for years for these foot soldiers to be able to win the war, for the nitzachon of the Milchama. So the Friedrich Rebbe there in the Mamer says, in order to explain what Eitzris means, what are the Eitzris Lamaila, that the Eibishter is mevazbez, there's such tremendous giluyim of levels that are not revealed usually, to explain what are those Eitzris that the Eibishter reveals. So the Friedrich Rebbe says in the Mamer, we have to explain the Lashon of the Zohar, Eirein Seif Lamaila Maila Den Kates, and Lamata Mata Den Tachlis. That the Eibishter, there's two different things that's said about the greatness of the Eibishter. One is that the Eibishter is Lamaila Maila Den Kates, and the other is Lamata Mata Den Tachlis. So this is an expression that it says in the Zohar. It sounds like these two inyanim of Lamaila Maila Den Kates and Lamata Mata Den Tachlis sounds basically like the same inyan, same idea, that Eibishter is unlimited in all places, in all ways, Maila, Mata. But in Chassidus it explains Barichas, and especially here in this Hemshech, starting from Ois Yud Aleph or Ois Yud Beis, a lot of Oisias here. The Friedrich Rebbe explains Lamaila Maila Den Kates is one inyan, Lamata Mata Den Tachlis is another inyan. Two different inyanim. Lamata Mata Den Tachlis is on a lower level. It's the expression of the Eibishter on a lower level, so to speak. And then Lamaila Den Kates is even higher. And that's the real Eitzah. The revelation of Lamaila Maila Aden Kates. In order to explain what this Eitzah of Lamaila Maila Aden Kates is, Friedrich Rebbe is first makdim what Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis is. Once you understand what Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis is, we'll understand how great the revelation of Lamaila Maila Aden Kates is. And that's the Eitzah. That is the Eitzah. So this is all a hesber along the way to come to explain what the Eitzah is. But along the way, as the Friedrich Rebbe explains, each level, he explains it in detail, and he applies it also in Aveda. Every ice could be learned as part of the Hemshech, and it's important to realize where this ice comes in. But at the same time, every ice is an inyan b'fnei atzmai. And here the Friedrich Rebbe will take a Hira and explain in Avedas Hashem the point that he speaks about in this ice. We'll see. Okay, so let's start inside. This is these inyanim are deep inyanim, and we'll try the Eibishter's help, whatever possible, to explain to see what it's speaking about here. Okay, Hinei V'hinei ma shomer lamato ad ein tachlis. This lashon that the Zohar says that Oyer Ein Sof is lamato ad ein tachlis. He's down. He goes down without any end. What does this mean? This refers to this, that Oyer Ein Sof is revealed and it extends itself, it's mispashet, it spreads from one level to the next without an end. Shehu b'pchinas ispashtos, that the Eibishter is mispashet. B'pchinas ispashtos and b'pchinas Ein Sof, how is he mispashet? He's mispashet in a way of Ein Sof, ve'ein shir ubli gvul mamish. Ad lamata mata, to the lowest levels. B'madregis hayesa achreinis v'hayesa tachteinis, extending all the way down to the lowest, to the last levels possible. Okay, what's the taich of these words? What's the chiddush that he's saying here? So you learn the simple pshat of the words that he's saying is, if the Eibishter is Ein Sof, he's endless, he's infinite, what does that mean? That the shine, the extension, the espashtus of this Oyer continues endlessly. Which means if you have a light, if you have a source of light that has a very limited amount of power, so it extends also away from the source, but it eventually gets less and less and less, it keeps on, and eventually the light stops. So it's not a hashpah that continues forever. It's not a hashpah that can connect to every level, to every place. The Eibishter Lamaila, the hashpah that comes from the Eibishter, comes to every single level, every single place, and there's nothing no place it can't reach. Even places that are very far from the source, it reaches there as well. And the furthest place, even a place that seems to be so not associated with the source, it comes there as well. That's the pashut pshat of what he's saying here. But if you look here in the Lashon, the Friedrich Rebbe is saying much, much more than that. It's not just that the hashpah comes and extends to endless levels. But look in the words, it says, B'pchinas ein sof ve'ein shir ubli gvul mamish. Meaning that wherever the Oyer comes, it comes there and it remains the same Ein Sof, the same intensity of Ein Sof as it is originally of what Oyer Ein Sof is. That same Ein Sof, whichever level it's on, it's the same Ein Sof. So again, this is two different points. One point is the fact that the koyach of Ein Sof is the hashpah reaches very far and reaches from one level to the next and to the next. And even though all these levels are very far and unassociated to the source, but there's no boundaries for the Eibishter. There's no gedorim, and therefore the Eibishter reaches to places that are out of his, so to speak, his realm, even away from him, even far from him. The Eibishter reaches there as well. It can be mashpia Ein Sof. Not only that, the Oyer that comes in every single place remains Ein Sof, doesn't change. It's the same koyach of Ein Sof with the same nature, the same power of Ein Sof. It doesn't get changed or adapted to the level that it comes into. That klal, when you have hashpah that comes to a certain place, so what happens with this hashpah when it arrives at a certain place? It gets affected by the place, by the environment that it enters into. It could reach very far, but it doesn't retain the same nature of what it is originally. Wherever it comes to, it gets changed. So here the Friedrich Rebbe is saying that this is Oyer Ein Sof, it's mispashet b'pchinas ispashtos, b'pchinas Ein Sof ve'ein shir bli gvul mamish, ad lamata mata. It remains Ein Sof wherever it is. It doesn't get affected by any level that it is. This is the second point that I'm saying, which is the main chiddush of what the Friedrich Rebbe is saying, is the concept that Chassidus always speaks about, aniyah v'ayaloi shanisi. That while there is so many shinuyim in madregis, higher worlds, lower worlds, and there's all these different levels that are created, and the Eibishter, that's also the koyach of the Eibishter, that he creates a place which is so far and different, and all these various levels. That later there's changes, there's differences, but nevertheless, Ein Sof, the Eibishter himself, Be'emes, does not get affected by any of this. When the Eibishter, the hashpah of the Eibishter that comes in all of these levels, he's there the same way he's there in the source, the same way the hashpah comes in every single place, it remains the same Ein Sof.
What's the place tachlis? Is it purpose or just...
No. Over here, Ein Tachlis does not mean purpose. The word Tachlis over here means without an end. Tachlis means an end. Ein Tachlis means without an end. That's the Taich of Tachlis here.
Purpose is also an end.
Okay, could be. When you reach your purpose, that's why those two words are one. Okay. Okay, this needs more of a hezbollah, but just first to clarify this point, that he's telling you that it's Ein Sof in every level. And V'zehu Ein Sof Lamata Din Tachlis. So this is the Taich of what the Zohar is saying, that Ein Sof is Lamata Din Tachlis Shehispashtus Ha'oir. This, the third extends and comes down from level to level. Hu b'pchinas Ein Sof u bli gvul klal. Every level that it comes on, it remains Ein Sof and bli gvul klal. So you see, it doesn't say hu b'chinas Ein Sof. It's not that it goes Ein Sof. B'pchinas, he's describing the nature of the earth itself. Wherever the earth is, it remains Ein Sof and bli gvul. Ad madrega hayesa mata mata. Even when it reaches to the lowest level, to the lowest place. Okay, so there's a huge chiddush here, because so what's taka the shayrish of the sinyan? What's the reason for this? Derech klal, any ashpa that comes from one level to the next, so in seder ishtalshalos, come from chachma to bina, whatever level it is, from one level to the next in the same world, or from one level to the next, you're going from one world to another world, from atzilus to bria, from bria to yitzira. The l'chayre, it adapts to the level that it enters into. Usually that's the way Ashpa works. When you have something in a source and then it comes out to another place, it adapts. You have a dvar seichel. The mashal that Chassidus always uses for a ruchni is the hashpa, is the hashpa of a rav to a talmud of seichel. You have a seichel that's in the seichel in the moyach of the rav, and he understands it in a certain way, and then he's sharing it with someone else. When the other person gets it in his moyach and his seichel, so even if the other person is getting the idea, but nevertheless it gets adapted to some degree. Everybody has his own way of understanding it. So every ashpa that reaches to a certain place gets adapted to the mitzias of that place. You have it physically, you have ashpa of Chassidus brings the mashal of water that comes from one place to another. So there's the water where it is in one place, and then in another place, it leaves from where it was, it comes to a new place where it is, and it adapts to the new place that it's in. It's not going to be the same like it was in the source. The same thing in the Ruchni is a Ashpa. Every Ashpa, wherever it goes to, it adapts to that place. It changes. It's not the same like it was. And by level, it always changes. Here we're saying, Ein Sof, the Ashpa of Ein Sof does not change in the Ashpa where it comes to. Does not adapt. What's the reason for this? So the reason is, this is something that the Friedrich Rebbe explained, Bekitzer in Oisid Beis, benegay to what Ein Sof is. So there the Friedrich Rebbe said, Ein Sof means that the true Ein Sof of the Eibishter himself is the nature of the Oir is not a Metzias for itself. The emes inyan of Ein Sof, only the Eibishter himself is truly Ein Sof. What is the true concept of Ein Sof? The true concept of Ein Sof means that the Eibishter himself has absolutely no definition, no boundaries, no programs of how he exists and what he exists. He doesn't exist in relation to anything. He exists ba'etzem. But whatever there is about the Eibishter is all him, about him, not in connection to anything else. Any metzias that exists in relation to something, exists to some degree, it adapts to the place of where it exists. A gashmis de metzias adapts to the physical place that it's in, that it takes up a certain amount of space of that place where it exists. So that's and it can only exist here, it cannot exist there. It's very limited in the oifen of how it exists in this space. A ruchni zigmitzias doesn't adapt, doesn't connect to space in that kind of way. But nevertheless, even a ruchni zigmitzias like a dvar seichel also has certain gedarim of how it exists, what defines its truth, its existence. It's not an undefinable truth. If I tell you any dvar seichel, 2 + 2 = 4, it's not an undefinable thing, it's defined. Every single metzias L'chatchila is a created metzias, and therefore it's a defined metzias that according to its world of whatever the definition of that world is. The Eibishter himself, it does not exist in relation to anything. He exists ba'etzem. He's the source of everything. He is everything. He's whatever about him is because he is ba'etzem. So therefore, the Eibishter does not adapt anything. When we say that the Eibishter is in every single place, there's no place that's void of the Eibishter's presence. What does that mean? That the Eibishter is able to extend and connect and be present in every single place? The Eibishter is l'chatchila not shaykh to anything. He's not adaptable to anything. He's above everything. He's removed. He's completely removed. And therefore the Eibishter exists be'etzem. Right? But at the same time, though, it has to be clarified. I'm not going to go into the whole arichas here now, but it doesn't mean that the Eibishter exists in another realm, and in our realm and in our definition of existence, he doesn't exist. The Eibishter exists here fully on every level and in every place. He exists in the Gashmis, the realm of existence, and the Ruchnis, the Eibishter. He's everywhere mamish. At the same time, though, he doesn't adapt to any level. The Eibishter doesn't get changed by one level and the other. The same thing is also with Oyer Ein Sof. The Oyer, the expression of Oyer, is what kind of an expression is it? It's not a type of a hashpah that comes out, that is here to connect to one level or to another level. In Chassidus, it speaks about the difference between the term shefa and the term oyer. The term shefa means a hashpah that comes out, that's focused on the recipient. What could the recipient handle? That's the type of hashpah, like a rav to a talmud, that the whole hashpah is l'chatchila, teaching on the level of the student. So therefore, the hashpah is not the reflection of the teacher, it's not the teacher himself being sort of transplanted in the mind. The whole union of the hashpah is to give over, to focus on the level of the student. So the whole nature of the hashpah in the first place is about the recipient. Mashenken oyer is b'derech mamela. Oyer is what the source itself is. The whole intensity of the source is found in the oyer itself. The oyer is the whatever the source itself is. It's expressed b'derech mamela, and in that expression you have the full expression, the full reflection of what the source itself is. Like the Oyer HaShemesh, this has been by Riches about this. I'm not going to go. We learned about this last year, but so the Nukud over here is that the Eibishter himself is not adaptable or related to anything. The Eibishter is Mitzias HaMittis, a emes Mitzias that exists, and therefore the Oyer that comes from the Eibishter, that's a full reflection of the Eibishter himself. That Oyer is Ein Sof, and whatever level it's on, it remains Ein Sof. On one hand, it's a hashpah that comes from level to level, and it goes down lower and lower, and it comes to each place. And at the same time, it remains unchanged. Doesn't get moved. It's loishanisi. It's the same b'pchinas Ein Sof wherever it is. That's the taich of Oyer Ein Sof lamata mata ad ein tachlis. Okay, this is mamish the kitzer, the nekuda. Okay, but now here, the Friedrich Rebbe is going to focus on explaining some details of what this means. Madreges hayosa achreines v'hayosa tachteines. What does it mean, the last and lowest levels? Hine oilemis ha'ein sof shelifnei tzimtzum. So the Friedrich Rebbe divides this into basically three categories. There's oilemis ha'ein sof, the existence of worlds of ein sof that are lifnei tzimtzum. So lifnei tzimtzum is also levels. There's also oilemis ha'ein sof. It's not a concept of an olam, of a world, the way we understand it, and the way when we talk about olamus after tzimtzum or olam atzilus, olamus ein sof, over there it's all just the infinity of the Eibishter before tzimtzum. At the famous lashon that it says in Eitz Chaim, Hoya oyer ein sof mamala makam acholol. Over there, the only thing that's sensed and that exists is just the ein sof of the Eibishter. That's one realm of existence. V'olam atzilus, and then after tzimtzum, so you have the world of Atzilus. The Sham Mamer ha'Oyer Ein Sof begilui. Even the world of Atzilus is also a place where Oyer Ein Sof is there and it's revealed there, fully revealed there. It's also a world of godliness. So both of these worlds, whether it's the Olamus Ein Sof and Olam Atzilus, Hareim Kelim Lo'Oyer Ein Sof. It's a place, it's an environment, it's a level which the presence of Ein Sof, of the Eibishter, the infinite presence of the Eibishter, is there in a world, in a place which is Kelim. It's a place that could receive the Eibishter naturally. Kelim, what's a Keli? The idea of a Keli, I think when he says a Kelim, it goes on both, on Sayin Elam Ein Sof and Sayin Elam Atzilus. Maybe it only goes in Elam Atzilus. But when he says here the Lashon Kelim, what he means is it naturally is able to receive godly revelation. Like again, going back to the mashal Chassidus always gives so a ruchni zegashpa, the mashal from a rav to a talmud. If a rav is teaching a talmud, no matter what level of a Talmud is teaching to, that is, the Talmud is a keli. In what sense? You're trying to give over a dvar seichel. What's the keli for seichel? To have a mayach that could understand seichel. So if you're teaching a student that's on a very high level, you're teaching a student that's on a very low level, whatever level of student you're teaching on sof, you're teaching somebody that has seichel. And therefore, he has a keli that is naturally able to receive and understand intellectual ideas. That's teaching hashpa and oifen, that is a keli for this hashpa. Same thing over here when it speaks about the worlds that are Ein Sof, whether it's Eilam is Ein Sof Shlefnei Tzimtzum, whether it's Eilam Atzilus. This is a place which is a keli for Ein Sof. So the fact that the Eibishter is there and he's fully received there is not a chiddush b'chlal. They're kelim for this. L'hiyais, and the reason is that gamma kelim hareim l'kus mamish, because in Eilam is Ein Sof and even in Eilam Atzilus, even the kelim there are also completely godly. What are the kelim? The kelim l'chayre is already the defining existence. What contains what's you have in a world of Atzilus. In the world of Atzilus, you have 10 spheres. It's chachma, bina, so on. Each 10 of the spheres are l'chayre limiting and defining entities. So that's a keli that limits and contains. But yet, what are those kelim in the world of Atzilus? They're all elikus mamish. They're absolute godliness, meaning that you don't sense over there at all that there's episode mitzias that's not godliness. Even the kelim gufa are also a full expression of the koyach of the Eibishter. The lashon that does he bring it over here soon? The Mamer iyu v'garmoy echad, right? It always says regarding Atzilus that even the kelim there are also complete godliness. Also, as a hezba barichis, what that means, why the kelim are godliness. What the kelim are lakus. Vim kain ein pele klal ha'orin sof mersham begiloi. It's not a wonder. It's not considered to be something that's unusual that orin sof is fully revealed in such a place, because this is a place which is elokos. V'chein ein pele ma'ashem yechelim lekabel orin sof agoli. It's also not a wonder that the kelim of Atzilus are able to receive orin sof because the kelim themselves are also an inyan of Holokos. So therefore it's able to receive the koyach of Ein Sof. That's not the chiddush over here. Avol, Eilam is biyah hareim b'pchines mata. Worlds of biyah, that's considered to be a level of mata. So just to finish off the inyan, going back to the mashal of a Rav teaching a student, so if a Rav is teaching a student, like I said, no matter what level of the Talmud the Rav is teaching, there's always a keli that's able to receive the words of the Rav because he's teaching a student that has seichel. So the Rav feels that he can explain, that he feels comfortable to reveal his ideas and express his ideas to somebody. He's not just talking to the wall, but he's talking to a person that has seichel to understand. And the seichel, that's makabel, the fact that his seichel is able to take in those ideas and is able to understand is natural. It makes sense. It's not a pella. The seichel comes from a place, from a mayach, that has this koyach of understanding a dvar seichel, and the Talmud also has the same. He also has a keli of seichel that's able to understand seichel. Mashenkin, a Rav that's able to speak to a wall, and the wall understands. He's able to speak to something that doesn't have any keli b'chlal, doesn't have a keli for seichel. He can speak to a table, and the table is going to understand. It's a pella. There's no keli for in a table, in a wall, for dvar seichel. Sometimes speak to teachers, they'll tell you they speak to the wall and they create this pella. so there's no keli for it at all. There's no brain, and it penetrates. It goes through. The Ein Sof could be there. That's what real Ein Sof means. Real Ein Sof means the fact that it's able to come to a place. It's able to be present in a place where there's no keli for it. That's what Eilam is biyah legabe lakos, which is a mitzias. It's a yesh. Legabe lakos is like a Rav trying to speak to a table, and that the table should begin to understand. And like I said before, not only that the table begins to understand, but the presence of the seichel, the way it is in the source by the Rav, is with the same intensity over there in the place in Eilam is biyah on that level where it's received. So the pella is twofold: that it comes to a place where there's no keli b'chlal, and also that it's there with the same intensity that it is originally, which is Ein Sof. Okay, we're in Oster Gimel of Basi Ligani. Let's see, we're holding Gufel and Shmasa. Let's start where it says Masha'enkim biyahim bechinas levushim. Or a little bit before that. Aval, at the beginning of the line. Aval oilam is biyah. So what did we learn yesterday? The Friediger Rebbe is explaining here that the taich of Ein Sof, Lamata ad ein tachlis, means that the revelation, the hispashtos of Ein Sof is without any limits. Comes into every single level. From the highest Eilamus to the lowest Eilamus. The lowest place, Mata. Madregis hayes achrenis, hayes tachtenis. Elokus is mispashet there. And the Chiddush is that even there, second point, but even there it's also b'pchinas Ein Sof. It remains Ein Sof. It doesn't get affected, it doesn't get changed in any way by the environment that it enters into. Because as I explained yesterday, the inyan of Oyer is, it's the true revelation of the Eibishter, not connected to anything, not based on anything. It doesn't connect to any level or recipient. It's just reflecting the truth of the Eibishter himself. And the Eibishter himself, the Eibishter himself exists by Etzem. So wherever he is fully. So when we see this Getlichkeit, that's Machaya, a world, whichever world it is, what's that Chayes of Getlichkeit? It's Ein Sof. And that Ein Sof is the Eibishter himself. We just had in the Hagah of Tanya, maybe it's sort of connected to what we're learning here, and of the Tanya, the Hagah of Tanya, Perik Vov. Remember the Hagah that Alter Rebbe there says? The Alter Rebbe teaches there that what's the world that we're living in? It's a place which is Rashaim Goivrim Bay, right? It's Rubai Kukule Ra, and it's Rashaim Goivrim Bay. See if I can bring it up right over here. Right over here. But then, the Alter Rebbe in the Hagah adds and says, even though we don't see any Elokus whatsoever in this world, nothing, we just see Ma'aseilam Hazeh, Koshem, Verom, Veresham, Goivrim Bay. What's the truth? That is the highest of the Eibishter in the world, Esesphiris of Kedusha. And in those Esesphiris of Asiyah, there's Esesphiris of Yitzirah. And in those Esesphiris of Yitzirah, there's the Esesphiris of B'riyah. U'b'toichan Esesphiris da Atzilus, she'b'toichan Oyer Ein Sof Baruch Hu. V'nimtza, Oyer Ein Sof Baruch Hu, Malei, Kol ha'aretz halazu ha'tachtoina, Al Yidei Yislapshuse B'Esesphiris Arba'elam Atzilus B'riyah Yitzirah Asiyah. So that we learned this Lashon, Alter Rebbe says this Lashon, the Hagah of Tanya, right? That it comes out that Oyer Ein Sof, the Chayes of Elokus, the Chayes of Elokus in every Olam, is really the presence of Oyer Ein Sof. Elamai comes through a slapshus, and it comes through a tzimtzum and a helam, and it gets minimized, that the intensity of that Chayes shouldn't be felt as strongly. But what's the emes? The emes is that Oyer Ein Sof is fully here, with its entire koyach of Ein Sof. The fact that there's a tzimtzum and there's a helam, that's another story. That's another koyach of the Eibishter. There is mitzamtzum and mailam, that we're not able to sense it, and so on. But the truth is that that's the koyach of Ein Sof, that it's mispashet in every level, and it remains completely Ein Sof. Okay, so what we learned yesterday is the fact that Ein Sof is mispashet and the elam is lifnei tzimtzum. That's no pella. That's his lashon. It's not that's not called a pella. Pella means something that's like unusual. Right? It doesn't make any sense. That's a lakos. That's the layer of existence which is all the Eibishter. That's lifnei tzimtzum means the natural expression of the unlimited presence of the Eibishter without any relation to anything else. Then the Friediger Rebbe said, even this, that you have a revelation of Ein Sof in the world of Atzilus, is also not a pella. Even though the world of Atzilus is be'ein areich to what's above Atzilus, because Atzilus is a world where you have 10 spheres, 10 defined spheres. Above Atzilus is Pshitus. There's no 10 defined spheres. The world of Atzilus is a place of spheres, but it's also not a pella. That's a place of Elokus where that's revealed over there. Because what's Atzilus? Atzilus is the world of Elokus. There's no Yesh. Atzilus is not an existence of a Yesh. Atzilus is the Eibishter revealing himself. The Lashon that Chassidus brings, always the Gabi Atzilus, is that it's Gilui HaHelam. It's developing and expressing what was there concealed before. It's not a new Metzias B'chlal. L'chayre and Atzilus, there are things that seem to be completely new that did not exist before. The Tzir, the very fact that you have the definition and the tzir of the 10 spheres, those tzirim of the 10 spheres did not exist before, because before it was pshitas. Doesn't matter. But afapikain, the tzirim themselves of Atzilus are a tzir of a lakos. It's not a tzir of a yesh, of a new metzias that the Eibishter creates. That's why Atzilus is called with the word Atzilus. What is the translation of the word Atzilus? It's like it says by Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayatzal min haruach asher alav, Moshe Rabbeinu revealed from his koyach of nevuah and the revelation of Elokus that he had, so that the Nevi'im should have that koyach of nevuah as well. What was Moshe Rabbeinu doing? He was revealing, he was bringing down that his koyach of nevuah should be transplanted into them. It's not a different, that they are separated and different than him. There's lashon that the Medrash says, a famous mashal the Medrash gives them. Moshe Rabbeinu doima b'is shah, like a candle. When you light a candle from one from another. So you're taking the same fire and you're bringing it onto another candle. It's the same candle. It's the same thing. And not only that, says that the place where you take the candle from is not chassid. It doesn't change in any way. Right? So the idea of Atzilus is the koyach of the Eibishter to extend himself, to be megala himself in the tzir of the 10 spheres. Not to create a new mitzias, a yesh, a bria. That's not what Atzilus is. The idea of Atzilus is the Eibishter is so powerful that he could reveal himself even through tziyurim of a sphere that are be'enarech to him. Does Chesed express who the Eibishter is? No. But the Eibishter could be megala himself in Chesed. So on the one hand, Chesed is be'enarech to Elokus, to the Eibishter himself, which there's no tzir of Chesed. At the same time, though, over here, the Eibishter doesn't create a yesh of Chesed, it's the Eibishter being nisgala through Chesed. So it's all still a hispashtus of Elokus. Therefore, he says here on the Mamer, ein pella. The fact that that's a place of Elokus, that's not the pella. What's the pella when we say that Orein Seif reaches in every single level? The pella is regarding the lower Eilim is biyah. So let's continue inside. Aval Eilim is biyah, but the lower Eilim is hareheim b'chinas mata. They are the level of mata. We said before, the mata. Adlin tachlis, the lashon of lamata that the Zohar says refers to the lower Eilim is biyah, and he puts all three of them in the same category. Even though the pratis they're different, as I'll soon point out the kitzer, but b'chlalis Eilim is biyah. They're all called mata because bria, as much as asiya, is a mitzias, a new mitzias of a creation of a yesh. Here there's more of a yesh, here there's less of a yesh, but it's a mitzias of a created being. That's called mata. Mata means a place which is not elokos. He created a nivra, and there the chayis and the kiyum of this nivra, the elokos that's in it, Orein Seif is there, is present in this mata, and it's Orein Seif mamish. The Eibishter himself is completely there in this mata. So he gives the mashal from what it says in the Medrash, not in the Medrash, sorry, in the Zohar. Kalim datzilo sem kegufel nishmasa. The kalim of Atzilus are compared to like a body's relation to the life of the neshama. Mashenkin biyah, when we speak about the lower worlds of biyah, what are they compared to? Hemchinas levushim. They're compared to levushim. So this is a mashal that gives you a little bit of an understanding the difference between kalim and biyah. Kalim of Atzilus and biyah. Even though both of them are l'chayre, kalim of Atzilus is also a keli, a limited being of chesed, gvura, so on, but it's like a guf and a neshama. Guf and a neshama become one thing mamish. What happens when the neshama enters into the guf? The guf itself becomes alive. They don't remain two separate entities. The neshama is alive, the guf is dead, and the neshama is dragging along the guf. The neshama doesn't drag along the guf to move and to live. The guf is alive. You define the guf itself as a living being. The neshama and the guf become so one that you can't differentiate between them. Or if you want to look at this mashal of gufal and neshmasa regarding any particular limb in a person's body, so the way it's explained in Chassidus, that you have the koyach hariyah that comes into the eyes dafke and not into something else. So to speak, that's not a pella. Everything the chafiyerech, I mean the fact that there's a koyach hariyah in the eye is also a pella. But if a person has a koyach hariyah in his fingers, that's a pella. But if he has a koyach hariyah in his eyes, that's not a pella. Why is it not a pella? Because the eyes is such a chaymer, it's a gashmi, is the aver that's prepared, that's made for the koyach hariyah. It's a lens that the koyach hariyah could be nizgala through this type of a chaymer of a gashmi eye. So that's not called a pella. Agam, of course, it's a huge pella. But afal pikain, what happens is the eye itself becomes this koyach to see. Koyach of vision is there in the eye itself. It becomes one thing mamish. It's a keli to this koyach hariyah. Masha'enken, if a person would be able to see with his fingers, so that the finger is not a type of a chaymer, of a aver that's prepared, that's for a koyach of vision. It's for using it for other motor skills in the fingers. So if a person has a koyach of the ear and the fingers, that's a huge pella. Right, so the same thing when you talk about guful and neshmasa, the chayis that there is in every aspect of a person's guf, that's a keli for the neshama, so it's sort of naturally being expressed through the guf and what kind of a oifen that the guf itself is prepared for this. It's able to receive this revelation. But then you have levushim. Levushim is a completely different thing. What are levushim? Levushim are bein arech to the person that wears them. Levushim doesn't become one with the person himself. Levushim, you could change your clothing. Levushim is a completely different mitzias. It's a mitzias for itself. You have the levushim, they're sitting and folded or hanging in the closet, or you can wear the levushim. So anachanami, what's the pnimius of a levush? The pnimius of a levush is to express the person that's wearing the levushim, or to give the person the ability to come out, to walk, to go onto the street. Person is dressed. It's not shot when a person walks in the street that you're going to say that he's walking, and and he's taking his clothing to the cleaners, and in order for him not to have to carry them, so he's wearing them. So like the levushim are walking, but it's just convenient for him to wear them, and the levushim are walking and he's walking. No, the person's walking and he's dressed with his clothing. The clothing sort of becomes identified with the person himself. And the whole meaning of the levushim is to express who the person is. So in that sense, the pnimius of the levushim is also not a separate inyan of who the person is. But nevertheless, levushim is a new mitzias. It's not only be'ein arech to the person. The emes is that the guf is also be'ein arech to the neshama. Right? That's why it says many times in Chassidus that b'negei to the guf, mafli lasas, the fact that you have ruchni is life that's able to enter into a physical guf, and the physical guf becomes physically alive, is a pella. But in this Mamer here, the Rabbi is saying that's not really the emes pella, because even though it's be'ein arech, but the guf itself becomes unified with the neshama. It's not considered to be a separate entity, at least over here in this mashal, the way that I was explaining it. Mashenkin levushim. Levushim is not just be'ein arech to the neshama, but levushim is like a whole mitzias nifrat for itself. It's a completely different mitzias. Elamai, the person puts on these levushim. And the life and the mitzias of the person is expressed through the levushim. When you see the person with his clothing, you don't look at the person as two different things. It is the person and his clothing. That says it's so interesting. Even in halacha, you have this difference. We learned it in the Gemara. We had it in the Rambam not long ago in Hilchas Tumas Tzaras. There's a difference if a person walks into a house where there's a nega and he's wearing his clothing, or he walks into the house and he's holding his clothing in his hands. The tumah of the begadim, the shear of how long he has to stay there for the begadim to become tameh is different if he's wearing it. So it's him, it's the person. The levushim is not a separate thing. If you're holding the levushim in your hand, so then the levushim are considered to be a separate thing. So the levushim, as much as it expresses the person, you see that the chiddush of the levushim is that it expresses who the person is, but the mitzias of the levushim is completely separated. It's a separate entity of the mitzias of the person. You can't say the levushim themselves become alive, a chelik of the nefesh. That's the mashal for Eilam is biyah. Eilam is biyah is bechinas mata, because it's like levushim, which is be'etzem a completely separate entity of the person. This is the lashon that it's also said in Pasach Eliyahu. Kam levushim tekinis lain. The Eibishter prepared levushim for the higher elements, for the gilui of lekos that there is in Eilam Atzilus. The Eibishter prepared levushim for them. What are those levushim? The koyal al biyah. It refers to the lower elements of biyah, which are the levushim. Shem rak levushim bulvad la'oir akelim d'atzilus. They're only levushim to the kelim of Atzilus. So the kelim of Atzilus, sheheim b'pchinas gufa kanal. The kelim of Atzilus, they are the gufim, like the body. That the neshama, the nefesh, becomes one with the body. That's the kelim of Atzilus. And then you have the levushim, which are the mitzias of the giluyim that there are in Atzilus and the kelim. The levush of the giluyim of Atzilus is the Eilam Biyah. Okay, Mamer. And as you see, Imela Mekana Nebuchadnezzar. So the Zohar says that the level of Bina of Atzilus, it comes down and it nests in Kursaya. Kursaya literally means a throne. The throne is the world of Bria. In the Lashon of the Zohar, Kursaya is Bria. The Imela, which is the Imela is Bina, Hu B'chinas Bina, Datzilos, Harei Mekana Nebuchadnezzar, Eilam HaKisei, it nests in the world of Kursaya, the nest of the world of the Eibishter's throne, Shuhu Eilam HaBria. So what does that mean? That there's a Yerida, there's a Hamshacha of Eilam Atzilus coming down to the next world. And what's the Levush The levush for the bina of Atzilus is the world of Bria. Just like a person, he could be to himself in his privacy of his home, and over there, he doesn't have to wear any levushim. He's not going out from his place of comfort and from his place of privacy. He's the way he is to himself. And then if he goes out to another place, out of the doors of his house, to the street, so over there has to be levushim for him to be presentable. So to speak, the same thing. L'mayla, the gilu of Eilam Atzilus that leaves its world, it comes down into the world of Bria, and the world of Bria is the levush for Bina of Atzilus. And then you have Shesfiran, the six spheres of Atzilus be Yitzire. Yitzire is the levush for the six spheres of Atzilus. In other words, as much as in Eilam Habriya, the main koyach of Atzilus that's revealed in Eilam Habriya is the sphere of Bina. Bina is dressed up and is expressed in the world of Bria. So the six spheres, the middas of the Eibishter, are dressed up and are expressed in the world of Yitzira. And v'oifen, this is not so usual, this lashon, but oifen refers to Malchus. This is in the Maisim Rekave, in the Psukim, it talks about oifen, oifanim. Right? I mean, the oifanim is also the name for Malachim, but we're not referring here to Malachim. Oifen is Malchus, that's Basi. What world dresses up and expresses the koyach of Malchus, that's Dafka in the world of Asiya. Asiya, and then you have Asiya Agashmi, is the physical world, which is the lowest place. That is the levush for the lowest of the spheres, the sphere of Malchus. The lechein, Nikra Biyah, Nikraim Biyah, Mata. So the worlds of Biyah, all of them together in one category. The Rabbi here is putting, the Friedrich Rebbe is putting them in one category. They're all called Mata. Lefishaheim rak levushim lo'ir Atzilus. What's equal with all these elements, even though they're not the same, but nevertheless, they're all mato because they all are the levushim. When it says the lashon pasach leyog, levushim to kinis line, it goes on all three of them. They are levushim to various levels of atzilus. Okay, that's the inyan of mato benigeta elemis. Here, the Friedrich Rebbe brings this to another inyan. Seemingly, it looks like a side inyan. The Rebbe and the Mamer will explain the hemshech of the Oster, why the Friedrich Rebbe goes into this. But he connects the inyan of the levushim that there are in the elemis also to the neshamas of Yidden. Now regarding the worlds of Biyah, which are called Levushin, so it says there in the Zohar, the Minayu Parchen Nishmasen Levnei Nosha Shehem HaNeshamas, that from it is created and it flies the Neshamas of people, the Shehem HaNeshamas, the Neshamas of the Yidden come from where? They're created from these levels of the Levushim of Biyah. There's various different types of neshamas. Like as the Alter Rebbe already explains in Tanya, in Perik Beis, there are neshamas of Bria, there are neshamas of Yitzira, neshamas, different levels of neshamas. And those neshamas come from where? They come from the levushim of Biyah. Okay, what does this mean that the neshamas come from Biyah? Don't the neshamas come from a much higher place? We say every morning, neshamash nesatabi, tahirihi, and then atavrasa, titzarta, atanafachtabi. But here he says that the neshamas comes from the levushim of Biyah. So he explains, most neshamas that exist in the world today, neshamas the Biyah, are considered to be the neshamas of the worlds of Biyah. There's only one person in a generation. In earlier generations, neshamas d'Atzilus. So that's they are neshamas that come from Atzilus. Neshama d'Atzilus. In the earlier generations, so there was a chad bedara that's a neshama d'Atzilus. What does that mean? That means that in Deiris Achrein there is no neshama d'Atzilus. In every generation there's a neshama d'Atzilus. So after I'm not sure exactly how to type this lashon here when he says Deiris Harishainim. Avol reiv neshamas heim neshamas d'Biyah. Most neshamas that exist in the world, where are these neshamas from? The neshamas come from Biyah. Okay, so the Friedrich Rebbe doesn't touch over here the Inyan Barichis, but as we know, the Nekuda is that the Shayrish of all neshamas comes from Atzilus, and the Shayrish of all neshamas comes from even higher than Atzilus. The Shayrish of all neshamas comes from the Eibishter himself. The Taich of Tahiri, we say every morning, means that it comes from a place that's higher than the highest place, Atzmos, the Eibishter himself. All of Machshave, all the Shayrish that it says about the neshama. But when the neshama goes through a shtalshalus, when till the neshama comes down into Olam Hazeh, until the Vatan of Fachtabi, when it comes into a guf. When it goes through the ishtalshlus of all olamis, there are some neshamas that pass through all the levels and they don't get affected by the environment of every world they pass through. It goes straight through, and the same koyach of neshama dat tzilas, the way it is lamaila, it's lamata as well. The lashon that's brought in Chassidus when you get to Moshe Rabbeinu, when it says Moshe, Moshe, the Eibusher refers to Moshe Rabbeinu, loy posek taime b'gavayu, and there's no separation between the one Moshe and the other Moshe. What does that mean? The same Moshe Rabbeinu in his sheirish, lamaila, it's the same Moshe Rabbeinu here lamata. That's why his name was Moshe, that he was pulled out from the Nilus. What? Yeah, Meshisiu, he was pulled out from the Nilus, and the same Moshe of Alma de Iskasia in the water is the same Moshe Rabbeinu Alma de Isgalia in this world. And when he comes and he stands, when Moshe Rabbeinu walks into Padai, it's Moshe of Atzilus that's coming to approach Padai. That's what a Rabbi is. That's the Chad B'dara that he says when you have a neshama in the world, that his neshama is a neshama of Atzilus, or even higher than Atzilus. But then most neshamas, he says, Roiv neshamas, on neshamas the biyah. The neshama comes through one olam, it comes through another olam, and every olam it goes through, it gets affected by the environment and the nature of that olam, and it defines the nature of and the personality of that neshama. There's a neshama that's more bria oriented, more bina oriented. A neshama that's more emotional, more spheris oriented. The midas, I mean to say, the midas of yitzira. Then there's a neshama that's more action oriented. A person that's more action is what matters to him. Seichel, intellect doesn't matter to him so much. There's different natures in the personality of the neshama, and it depends on what kind of a neshama it is l'mayla. Okay, so that's the senior of he's saying. So the neshamas, where do they come from? They come from the various different levels of the levushim of biyah. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, okay, now why the Rebbe is bringing in this Indian of the neshamas over here? We're speaking about Eire and Seif. Okay, we'll have to see. We're going to have the Hemshcha Indian, and we'll see Mr. the Rebbe's Mamer, the explanation, the Kesher Indian. Okay.
This Indian over here, it says in King in Pelakwa, is the Gabi the Keli, not the Gabi the Eir. Gabi the Eir, the Eir could be made downhill,
right.
Even in other Mazas,
right.
The Atzmas could be made because the Tadri Eir, there's no color.
Right.
The Keli. But if we say that, he says over here by Atzilus, Sai the Eir Meir and Sai the Keli are both color.
Right. I hear what you're saying.